Welcome back to Charming Data, everybody. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to create a fully functional CRUD application using Flask and Dash in pure Python. So no need for JavaScript or PHP or CSS or any of that. CRUD stands for Create, Read, Update, and Delete Data. And this is exactly what we're going to do today. We're going to create a data table and a CRUD app that keeps track of the products, in this case phones, their versions, their prices, and the number of products that were sold for each version. You can do anything. Once you know how to create a CRUD application, you can do it with employee email, employee name, and employee date of hire. Or maybe you do car colors, really anything that you need to keep track of. Once you learn how to create this CRUD application, you can just change the column names and do whatever you want. So this is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to learn how to create different columns because that is the first part of CRUD. Maybe I want to create a date column. So you see here on the right, we created a date column. Or maybe I want to create a row. So I added a row below, and we're going to add another pixel here. Oops, let me misspell that. Pixel. We're going to learn to read the information into an Excel sheet, just like that. We're going to update that information. So you can see here the code allows us to update any column that we want. All right, so now let's say they sold 9,000 of pixel 33. This will be probably 30 years in the future. And we're going to learn to delete the data. So the code is going to allow us to delete certain rows, delete certain columns as well. Make sure to stay all the way to the end of the video because the code that I'm going to show you is also going to allow you to filter the data. Maybe you want only those with an I, sort the data. So maybe I want to sort it by those that have the price of over $900 and change the column names. Also, towards the end, I'm going to show you how to connect your CRUD app to some data analytics. So I'm going to show you how to create, in this case, a bar chart that connects and plots your data live. Once you know how to do this, then you can watch my other videos. You can connect other charts like pie charts or line chart or violin chart, anything you want, or multiple charts to your CRUD app. So it's kind of cool. All right. Oh, before we start, a small note. This is part one of the CRUD application tutorial. In part two, we're going to connect the CRUD application to a live database that will save the data as the user puts more information in it or takes information out of it. Now the data is saved into Excel sheet, but next week it's going to be live database. So make sure to subscribe below and turn on your notifications for this channel so you can be notified of the next video that I will post next week. Oh, and of course, like the video and share with your friends and your family and colleagues and even your parents if you think it's really good. It really helps me when you share the video as well. All right, so let's jump into it. Let's go into the code and see how we build this beautiful CRUD application. All right. So the first thing you want to do is you want to import these important libraries because you need these libraries in order to create the data. Oops, what did I do here? If you don't know how to, if you don't have Dash installed, really easy. Just go to terminal and click on pip install Dash, and there you have it. The Dash DataTable is already inside Dash, so you don't have to do anything else. Same thing with Plotly and Plotly Express. You can just pip install them. Then you want to start the app, and this is the first code of how you start the app. And then you create the app layout, app.layout. Everything is going to go into one div. Div is the sections of the page. So this div right here is the whole layout, and it ends right here. All right. So inside this page, what we're going to put, you probably already saw. Let me just put this actually together so you can see while we are doing this. In this app, or in this layout, we're going to put the first div, the first section, I shouldn't click on that, is going to be the input. And this input is this empty input right here. We're going to have, this is the ID of the input. It's going to have a placeholder, enter our column name. So you can see here, enter column name. And this is just the padding, this is the style. Right next to it, we're going to have a button. And this button is going to say add column, just like it says right here, and it's also going to have an ID. Very important that every component have an ID, because later on we're going to connect this data to the updates and the new information that comes in. All right, next is the data table. So as you can see here, we are creating the data table, which is the whole thing right here. We're going to give it this ID, our tables. We're going to create just basic or generic column names with product, version, price, and sales. They're going to have the same ID. They're going to be deletable, some of them, and they're going to be renameable, some of them. This product column and this sales column, I'm going to say deletable false, because they are tied to the bar graph, and I want to make sure they're always represent the bar graph, and they're always part of the CRUD application. So I'm not going to give the user the capability to delete these columns. Product and sales cannot be deleted. All right, so we have the columns, and then we have the data. So I just put the data in here, the basic generic data that the app will start with, but it doesn't have to be this. You can change it, you can put anything else. You can even upload any CSV document into your data table, so you can start with 100 rows or 200 rows instead of putting that in there. To do that, to upload, just go to this link below the video. As well as the code, open the code below the video, and in this link it will show you all you have to do is copy paste this code, try it on a different app just to make sure, and this code will create this, so this little blank space here. So once you drag an Excel sheet in here, it will create the data table for you. So this is I didn't do it here, so it's not too long of code, but you can do that instead of creating generic data right here. Next, we are going to create the editable true. This parameter, editable true, means that a user can go into any cell and just change the cell data in there. Okay. Row deletable, true, means that I can obviously delete the row if I want to, or add, not add, but delete rows. Sort action, and I have the explanation here if you want, allows you to sort the columns by column. Right here it says single. So I would say, let's say I want to sort the price. I can either sort it from low to high, high to low, or not at all, and then it's just the first one that comes up. Filter means I can filter the data, and we saw this before. Maybe I want all those that are filtered above $500. So now I'm filtering the data. But it's because I put filter action native. If you put none, then you won't be able to filter the data. Page action none means that I'm having all the data on one page at the same time. So if I have 100 rows, 100 rows will show up on this one page with a y-axis scroll, which is right here, this y-axis scroll. If you put native, I think, as an option here in the page action, this will allow you to decide how many pages you want how many rows you want per page. And then I'm just styling a little bit the cells because it's culturally accepted, or what people usually say is that anything that text wants to be aligned to the left, and usually anything that is integers or numbers has to be aligned to the right. So I styled it a little bit there. If you have more questions about the data table, make sure to open this link right here, which is the reference link, and it has all the parameters that we're using inside the code. So it has the columns parameter. We also saw, let's look for one parameter. Let's look for row deletable parameter. So I'm going to copy it, control find, and let's put control paste row deletable. And now you see that the row deletable parameter gives an explanation of what it is and what are the options in there. So all these parameters that we just went over are inside that web page. So make sure to read more about them and understand why we're using each parameter and how they work. And add more parameters if you want to your data table. All right, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to create a button, and this button is going to say add row, and it's going to be right under the data table right here. And we're going to create the button export to Excel right here. And then this section is a notification when saving to Excel. So I'm going to use these three Dash store component, the interval component, and the empty div, so I can have this message come up and disappear after 5 seconds once I export the data into an Excel sheet. And then I'm going to put the graph in there towards the bottom, so we're connecting data analytics to the data table. All right, so again, this is only the layout. If I hashtag out all this, so this is not in the code, and I save it, all I'm going to have, let's make this bigger so you can see, all I'm going to have is a data table, give it a second to load, that has no graph tied to it, and it only has these buttons and inputs, but they don't mean anything. I press on them, I press on this, I press on this. It doesn't do anything because this is just a basic layout. We are going to use this callbacks in the Dash app that allows us to connect information to interactive graphing and to finally create a CRUD application. If you want to learn more about how these work and what is the app decorator and how to exactly do all of this, just go into the video above, the introduction to Dash, where you can see all about the basics of all this and get a better understanding. Okay, so assuming you know a little bit about this, what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put in this callback, the output is going to be our table, is the component ID, right? Because our table was called, was a component ID of our table. And what I want, I want the columns of the table to be affected. Affected by what? Affected by these inputs and states. So I'm going to take the end clicks of this component ID was make this smaller, was the input right here. So I'm going to take the button, the add columns button. So I'm going to take the end clicks of that button. I'm going to take the value right here of this input, and I'm going to take the state of the column. So what the column looks like. I'm going to put all that inside this function. The end clicks right here, the value to the value, and the columns to the columns. They don't have to have the same name. And then I'm going to say if the button was clicked more than 0 times, if it was clicked 1 or 2 or 3 times, then append to the existing column this new information. So this is not necessarily understood if you're not familiar with Dash. In order to understand how this works, I'm going to help you by printing the existing columns before we do the click, and then printing after we do the click, so you see how it works. And I would recommend you do this with your Dash apps and your CRUD applications. Inside the functions, just print whenever you can, so you can see how things change according to your functions. So let's see how things change here. So let's actually activate this callback by clicking on the add column button. Let's see what happens. So I'm going to add a column name. I'm going to add, let's say, dates, or date column right here, add. And you can see that it added it right here to the right. And what did it do? What did it do right here? So we can see the column parameter, the existing columns in a data table, is a list of dictionaries. And each dictionary, this is the one right here. Let's make it bigger. Each dictionary right here is the column name, product, deletable, and so on. And then we have the version column and all the way to price and sales. See, sales right here. So this is the first print, this row. But this row, which is after right here, create existing column, which is after the end clicks is bigger than 0, after we do all this, is actually the row right down here. This is the print existing columns row. So you can see that it added another dictionary inside the list, and in this dictionary, this is the last dictionary, the last column inside the list of columns, and you can see that it added the name date, ID date, and renamable true and deletable true, which is what we have here. Deletable true, you can rename it, and this is the name and the ID is date. So we did this because of this function right here above. I said if existing columns, if the button is clicked, to the existing columns append this new information. So we have the value, which is the date string, and then we have the date of the ID and renewable and deletable. So this is really good when you want to understand how functions work. Just make sure to print things before and after. We're going to do one last example so you see how it works. Hashtag this out. And we're going to use this callback to add rows, right? So we're going to take the end clicks of the editing row button. This button is actually this one right here. And we're going to say if it's clicked more than 0 times, take the data and take the columns, do whatever you need to do here, which is this line of code, and then return the rows to the output. The output is always this. Remember from the introduction video, the output is always what you return, or what you return is always the output. So here our data table is the ID, and we are returning the rows that we just built inside this function. We're returning them into the data parameter of the data table. All right. So what are we actually returning? Let's just run the function and see. What we are returning is, let's go all the way back here. All right. So these are the rows. Let's say I want to add another row. So I just added another row, scroll down, and now you can see right here, there's two different lists here. The first list right here refers to this row, print, and the second list right down here refers to this print after we did the function, right? So let's see what's the difference. The first print of rows is just the name of the different columns and the data, 799 sales for each row. So I think we have like 10 rows, so it's going to be 10 different dictionaries, a long list. And then after we appended to the row these column information or the data information, we ended up with a new dictionary. This last dictionary, which represents the last row, has a product that's empty string, a version that's empty string. All the columns are empty. And why is that? Because all the columns are empty. We didn't put anything in there yet. Once we put things in there and save it to Excel sheet, the data will be saved. All right, so let's just put here pixel, and we'll put version 4. I think that already came out a while ago. Give it the price, and then give it sold 20,000. People went crazy with the pixel. All right. So we just saw how to add, let me minimize this, how to use the add row callback and function. Now we're going to see how to connect everything to data analytics or to a bar chart. So in this case, I'm just going to take our data table component ID, and then I'm going to take the data component of the data table. So I'm going to take, in other words, I'm going to take all this. This is a data parameter or the data component. I'm going to take all this, and I'm going to say, where are you? Callback. And I'm going to say, take this data, put it into a pandas data frame. I'm going to call it dffig, and then I'm going to create a bar chart. So it's plotlyexpress.methodbar, and then I'm going to use the data frame here. The x-axis is going to have the product, and the y-axis is going to have the sales. And this is a fig, and then I'm just returning the figure, because the figure goes into my graph, into the figure of my graph, which is right here. My graph is the graph ID, and figure is a parameter of the DCC graph of this, which I think is a list or a dictionary. I can't remember. I think it's a list. But anyway, whatever it is, it's empty. So inside this empty fig, I'm going to put this return this figure right here. Right? So this is how you create a bar chart. If you want to learn more about the bar chart, how to create it, just look at the video above or the playlist above. You'll see different videos on bar charts or pie charts or anything else you want to create inside this Dash app. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do is we're going to export this information to an Excel sheet. And why do we want to export it? Because we don't have a database that's connected to the information yet, to the CRUD app. So if I refresh this, everything is going to go back to the original data that we have in the data table up here. All right. So that's going to be next week. I'm going to show you how to create your database. So data will be saved. But for now, to save the data, you have to export to Excel sheet. So how do we do that? We do the callback right here. Right there. So I'm going to use this callback right here. I'm going to say this is a lot of code, so I'm not necessarily going to go over the whole code, because most of this code, like 18 out of the 20 lines, is really just to make sure that the message pops up and then disappears after 5 seconds. So if you want to learn how to make your messages disappear in your Dash app after 5 seconds, try and figure out this code. Really, all that you need is to create, export the information into Pandas, into an Excel sheet, is these 2 lines of code right here. So you take in the data set, which is this argument inside this function. You take in the data set, which belongs to this, right? Because you have 1, 2, 3, 4 input and states, and they are all inside of here. So the first one refers to end clicks, and intervals refers to end intervals, data set refers to data set, and this data refers to S. So all you need to do is have this state, take the data of your data table, put it into a data frame, and then take this data frame and create an Excel sheet out of it called your sales data.csv. That's all you need. Oh, and then you have to return an output. So I'm going to return an output, which is right here, which is the HTML plain text. So I'm just returning a plain text which says the data has been saved to your folder, which, remember, returns to this output because the return function is always connected to the output. In this case, let me see here. In this case, the first output refers to the placeholder children. This will export into where the app is located. So in this case, my app is located right here. So it exported your sales data. Let's make sure I did it correctly. Let's create another row. And we'll create this row. We'll have pixel 4. And then all the rest will be empty. So let's export to Excel. Great. Now let's open this Excel sheet. I think it's actually CSV, but you can change the formatting. You can do it Excel if you want. Just go into the reference page of the data table that I showed you in the link below the video, and look for the export parameter, and you'll see. So you see it worked because the last row is pixel 4, and these are empty, just like in the app right here. So there you go. We just created a fully functional CRUD application using Dash, which uses Flask under the hood in pure Python. And we also connected it to a bar chart that plots the data and does some data analytics in this CRUD application. Make sure to subscribe below to turn on your notifications, because like I said, next week I'm going to connect this to a live database. I think I'm going to use Postgres, where you can export to Excel sheet or not, doesn't really matter, but every time a user updates things like rows and columns, it's going to be exported to the live database. Hope you enjoy, play around with it, have some fun, and hit the comments below the video if you have any questions or any remarks or some advice. Have a good day.